Hey guys, welcome back to AP. So, it's unfortunate that the holiday season is over for us crafters. However, that means everything is now on clearance. So, get out there, buy as much of that crap as you can, because we can't do it again for another year. So, one of the things that I decided to do this week was I created all these little spiders. Now, spider miniatures are, in my opinion, kind of expensive, like $15 for like two of them or something, and that's like the WizKid versions, which they look good, don't get me wrong. I just don't have the money for those. These 12 cost me about $3, and with a couple of hours of work, I was able to turn them into what you see here, as opposed to those ugly green kind of glow-in-the-dark spiders that they were when I started. So let's stop talking about that and let's head to the table, and I'll show you how I turned those ugly green spiders into these little guys. So guys, like I said, I bought 12 of these for just a couple of bucks at my local grocery store. Now, one thing with these that was really unfortunate was they didn't really glow in the dark, and that was kind of sad because I did want to incorporate that somehow into the paint job, but I digress. So one of the bigger things that I needed to do here was these things set flat on the table, and that just wasn't gonna work for me. So with a lighter and just a real quick pass, these things were easily moldable. And when it comes to D&D, they are classified as a large creature, which means it's a 2x2 square. And I just used my my cutting mat here to make sure that I was staying within that 2x2 area. So I could use these for Frostgrave or Rangers and also D&D. Now, through the process of heating up the legs and rebending them or remolding them back into what I wanted, I had a lot of fun with this. Adding too much fire to these legs actually made them shrink, so there are some of my spider miniatures that have smaller legs, and also ones that I lost completely. I had to cut one off, so there's a little guy in there with a recent injury, so to say. Now, after I had all of them molded the way I liked them, I took them outside, sprayed them down with a black primer, and brought them back in to give them a really heavy dry brushing of a dark brown. And I stayed away from most of the deeper recesses where the legs meet the body, just to give it a little bit more depth. Now once that was all dry, I hit it with a light dry brushing of a tan color and stayed only to the center of the body just to try to pick up some of that little detail that these little plastic spiders had on them. Some of them didn't have any detail at all, which was unfortunate, but for the most part, a lot of them had an interesting pattern on their center bodies. Then once that was dry, I took some gnome oil and covered the entire spider with this to help bring all the paints back together and really darken them up just a little bit more. And then it was time for the eyes. Now, I only knew one way of making perfectly circular dots, and that is to use a toothpick. I just kind of trimmed the toothpick tip down to the size that I thought I was gonna need, and started by making the first two main eyes out of a dark brown, and then with a smaller tip went in and created the actual eyes with black, staying inside the center of those brown circles that I made before. And I also added a couple more eyes off to the side. I believe I went with 6 in total instead of a 8-eyed spider, but I thought 6 is a pretty good number. Now, in order to bring more depth to the eyes and actually help you be able to see them, I'm not sure whose technique this is or what it's even called, but I got a really fine tip on one of my toothpicks and just made a fine white dot at the top right corner of all of the eyes. one last thing that I decided to do was to give a design to the backside of these spiders, and I didn't really know where to even begin on this, so I just kind of Googled spider patterns, and I found that a lot of them have dots and stripes, weird patterns. So what I decided to do was to give these 6 dots and to hand paint some sort of a design on the back, just to give something else to these spiders, so that they're not just a brown blob on the table, they have some character to them. And once that was all done, I gave them a wash in Agrax Earthshade to tone down the white and the tan that I used on these pattern spots and lines. Now, one thing that I unfortunately forgot to do was to record that I did end up going back in after this was dry and adding some red dots inside of these patterns, just to give these a little color, because they were really dark and didn't have much visually to look at. So I feel like the red dots really added to it, made them look a lot more interesting. Okay guys, so super simple. These $3 spiders really came out looking a lot better than I thought they were going to, and that is commonplace in my videos, is I tend to worry about that. However, for $3, these spiders turned out really nice, and I think they're gonna look really awesome on the game table. And you know, who knows, maybe I'll try to convince my DM to use some giant spiders in our next encounter. So here's some pretty pictures. I couldn't resist but pulling out some of my extremely dated dungeon tiles from the beginning days of my terrain making and taking some action photos, if you want to call them that. But if you guys enjoyed the video, let me know. Please leave a comment down there. I would love to hear from you guys. As always, thank you to my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this as often as I do. And we're gonna call it there. So we'll see you this time next week.